So I'll make you co-host.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh,
Hello, hello.
Hi, Brent.
How you doing? Thank you for
Good.
taking the time to meet with us today, or meet with me at least.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about the confusion on the calendar.
No problem. I assumed we were going to be doing it, but I just wanted to figure out for the kids and stuff, let them know when we're going to start doing a fun day Sunday. You know.
Sure. So Brent, just so you're aware, this is being streamed to Facebook Live because our city attorney said we have to. So
Totally fine.
yeah. And then we also posted um, a Facebook Live so other people could join in. But I didn't know if you're
Okay.
open to that. If so, we could, Justin Hill let other people in. Otherwise, it'd just be us. It's up to you.
Perfect. All right. Sounds good. So thanks for taking the time to meet up with me today.
Of course.
Basically, I just want to kind of go over the.
By the way, let me thank you for your service as well. I really appreciate it. I know what you guys do is really important for the community.
Oh, and I know that the last few months have been a nightmare for everybody with regards of excessive time use. And with regards to COVID, you guys had to put in so many hours. So thank you for your time of 10-hour days of meetings that just didn't end till early in the morning. So I appreciate that as well. And I recognize how stressful that is for a family life too. So we do appreciate all the work that City Council's done with this as well.
Sure, no problem.
So just going over, after watching a few of the meetings, going over a few things, I would love to answer any questions that you may have directly of me for clarifying our fire department, how we operate. A few things that you mentioned, you want to explore becoming more of a medic-based fire department. You had concerns about why there were so many captains. I'd like to address any of those questions and stuff.
Sure. Yeah,
I can take the lead on this, or you can kind of shoot from the hip and shoot me some questions if you want.
Go ahead. I think it sounds like you already know the questions, so why don't you go ahead and then I can ask other questions as yeah.
Perfect. So like I mentioned when I talked to City Council, the biggest thing, and you're a math guy, I'm a math guy. So my background is economics, business management. I've owned my own business before too, becoming a firefighter. So looking at the net operating cost, when you subtract out the amount of money that we make back, Palo Alto fires like a net operating of 25 million. It's the reality of it. We don't really get that credit in a sense because that money goes to the general fund, that 11 million. So it really doesn't offset on the balance sheet to truly say.
I forgot to ask you. I know who you are, but I think for the people watching, they may not know who you are. Can you quickly?
Oh, I apologize. Brent White, Palo Alto Firefighters, Local 1319 President.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I should have asked you to do that ahead of time.
Sorry, I know it's kind of. I forget that we were streaming just because it's we're interactive, but I don't really realize who's watching as well. So sorry about that. So getting back to the net operating cost, it's $25 million a year really to run Palo Alto Fire. Adjacent agencies around us cost up to $48 million. They might have a few extra programs that we don't do. We are very focused on cost recovery, which is unique to a fire department, because most public safeties, they don't really make as much money back as we do. So it's significantly cheaper cost for what you get. You get more bang for the buck in Palo Alto. You mentioned the medic-based fire department. Well, just to give you a little bit of a history, we have 201 rights from back in the 70s. That's our transport rights. That's what allows us to be an island within Santa Clara County to do our own transports. With that, it allows us to do some of that cost recovery. We also have the Stanford contract which does additional cost recovery. Being that we transport, that alone makes us a medic-based fire department. The amount of cross-staffed units that we have, if you look on paper, the citizenry will see that we have 11 units on paper, 6 engines, 4 ambulances, 1 truck. But there's really only 8 units in reality because 3 of those engines become ambulances at a call. So we are really focused on the ambulance transport portion of it, which is why our transport times or our time to get to the house if somebody should make a call is pretty much half of that of what rural metro, the remainder of the county, will do. So I believe there's upwards of 15 minutes. We roughly hit between 7 and 8 minutes or so in our 90th percentile, I believe, which is significantly faster, which is a great benefit to the citizenry because when it comes to a heart attack or anything that's very time consuming, respiratory issues, for us to be able to affect the change by utilizing our skill set, knowledge and abilities, having that shortened duration to be able to get on scene and help people is a great value. I mean, I've had a few saves in my day. I still talk to those people, and it's an amazing feeling when you actually save somebody's life. So with those 201 rides, that alone makes us a medic focused. Previous chief, Nickel, he really focused on doing the cross staff model, which is of a benefit because it does allow for more transporting and more capture of those medical transport calls that come into the city. But one of the detriments for that is that there's only so many hours in the day. And we use the term unit hours of utilization. When you look at our call volume from 2008 to 2020, we've gone from 5,000 calls a year, and now we're at about roughly 10,000 calls a year, give or take a few. We have also lost around, let me take a look at my 9 people, I believe, in 2013 with the loss of Slack, 11 in 2018 with the loss of our dedicated hazmat unit, and just again now 8 in 2020. So that's a total of 28 personnel in 7 years, and that's line personnel. That's roughly about a third of our personnel have decreased in the last 7 years. Within the same time, or roughly a few years greater than that, we've actually doubled the call volume. Now, getting back to the unit hours of utilization, that means the time duration that you're physically on a call. When you look, and let's just use some simple rough numbers. Every engine takes about a half hour from the time it gets called to the time it's released for a medical. Long duration fires, those can last hours and hours, but let's just use a medical as an example. So if you have 10,000 calls a year and you have, those are engine calls, you have 5,000 unit hours of utilization. Adjacent agency next to us, one of our most comparable ones, has about 10,000 calls a year too. So they have about 5,000 unit hours of utilization. The difference with Palo Alto is that there are the amount of calls that we get and the amount of responses we send. 70% of our calls are medical calls. So we're going to send an ambulance with that. So you're not just sending one engine, but you're also sending an ambulance. So with that, you're going to add an additional 7,000 responses. So
yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. You know, one really common question is, you know, why do we send, you know, a fire truck out when it's a medical emergency, right? When there's clearly no, there's no, you know, fire, or, you know, you're not going to need to hook a ladder, right? Or it turns out barricaded in. Somebody maybe just did a slip and fall and they just need an ambulance.
That's a very good question.
Can you explain to the public as to why do we, you know, send a fire truck out with a, you know, one of the complaints we get is like, oh, there's all these like it's noisy, right? Send out the alarms, and it's just someone that slip and fell, right? Or someone that fell and can't get up, right? So why do we send out, you know, all these vehicles, all these fire vehicles, when there's a clear, it's clear that that's not needed. So maybe you could explain that.
Well, the problem is it's actually not clear that it's not needed. As a paramedic, I can tell you there's been many calls where I've gone out there for somebody that has a headache and it ends up being they're having a heart attack. And then that same person ends up losing circulation, their heart stops beating, and you have to start doing CPR on them. If you go into a hospital for the same event that we do in the field, which is a cardiac arrest, for example, the hospital will have upwards of 12 to 15 people managing that single patient. In the field, when we go out there, we have 2 people on our engine, or 3 people on our engine, and 2 people on our ambulance. One medical call, if it's a cardiac event, it might come in as something different. So we honestly don't know what we're walking into. That's why we always send more people, and if we don't need them, we can release them, because you can always tell them to discontinue the call because we haven't handled with the amount of resources on scene. But if you haven't sent those people or got them going, you run the risk of having the citizenry be unprotected to a certain level that we expect ourselves to be able to protect you at. So if we don't go above board or go a little bit higher on the response model just for safety, it ends up causing a detriment in the long run. Another thing that you have to think about.
Just to summarize, so basically you're saying that the reason why all these extra vehicles and people go out is just in case they're needed, and if they're not needed, they're released. And so the great thing about that is that if it is needed, you have all those people there ready to roll. Um, but then if they're not needed, the downside is it costs um, the cost is a lot higher as a result, though. That's so there's kind of like a trade-off, right? As a result.
I don't think the cost actually exceeds any higher because you're already having those people on staff and working during that day. But there's another aspect to sending an engine and an ambulance. If you look at our city from a geographical standpoint, and if you include Stanford in that geography,
Mm-hmm.
we have 6 fire stations within the city of Palo Alto and Stanford. They're very well geographically spaced. And what that means to the citizenry is a short response time for that first arriving unit to go there. So typically, the engine is going to be the first arrival on scene. That engine will always have a paramedic, just like our ambulance will always have a paramedic. And that paramedic on the engine can start the advanced life-saving techniques and skills necessary to stabilize a patient prior to the arrival of the ambulance. Then once the ambulance gets there, you can then transport at a faster rate. The nice part about working in Palo Alto as a firefighter is that we are very accustomed to the skill set and knowledge of all the other firefighters within the city. Other departments utilize another agency such as Rural Metro, which no detriment to them. It's just that they don't work hand in hand with those people all the time. I might be on the ambulance on a Monday, and then I could be on an engine on Tuesday. And when somebody comes in and says, hey, this is the type of patient we have, this is what's going on, I know exactly what they're thinking because they were my partner the other day on the ambulance. And it shaves down time and it gets the patient to the hospital faster and safer.
Sure. So Brent, I want to move. I want to move this along because we have, and maybe we should have actually budgeted more time for this because there's actually a lot I think we could discuss. But once you go on,
Sure.
one of the things I wanted to just ask you, is uh, do you know how many calls there are in the city that you guys handle roughly a year?
In a year, just shy of 10,000. But
10,000
that's
calls.
calls. And then if you send an ambulance and you look at the responses, 70% of those calls get 2 responses. So it's 17,000 responses in a year, roughly.
Okay. So 17,000 total. And then how many times have there actually been a fire of the at that 17,000? How many of them actually are fire? Like there's actually like, like the Stanford Dish area was burning or something like that. Well, how many of them are actual fires?
You'd have to pull the RMS records to have that. I don't have that information off of
I heard
my.
from the I heard from Geo that um it's like well under that. I forgot the exact number. It was well under 1,000. Some much smaller number. It's
Yeah,
like
but we don't just do fires as well. We also do
no no.
hazardous material responses,
I
car
totally
wrecks. I
I
mean,
totally get that. Yeah.
if we were to really look at the name fire department and
Mhm.
try to rebrand that name, it would be all services department because that's really what we do.
Sure.
The tradition of the name fire department came from that aspect alone. Since in the last few hundred years, we've branched out from fire to then doing, paramedicine, doing hazmat, doing technical
Sure.
rescue, urban search and rescue, all that stuff, wildland as well. So really the array of what we span is very dramatic and very large. So we have to do a lot of time for training. And what I was trying to get to my point was because of our high performance model of cross staffing ambulances and having a lot more velocity of unit hours of utilization, if you look at the ambulance responses, which are an additional 7,000, and they take about an hour, that's 5,000 hours for the engines and 7,000 hours for the ambulances. So we do 12,000 hours of unit hours of utilization. An adjacent department that's similar size to us, they only do 5,000 hours. So you got to ask, what does the adjacent department do with that extra 7,000 hours? They do specialized training. That I feel is something that we need to focus in back within the city of Palo Alto because we have lost that ability to do as much focused training on certain technical rescue type aspects because the velocity at which we run our pace, the cadence, is so much greater, 140% more time on call than an adjacent department that costs nearly double us. We're really giving the most bang for the buck in the city of Palo Alto with our fire department. But it does come at a cost, right? What's the cost going to be for running at such a high revolution so much? You're going to probably have more injuries. And we are seeing a little bit of an uptick on comp injuries because people aren't getting the downtime they need to recover because we have so much of that velocity, you have so much cross staffing. For example, at Station 2, the potential for the brownout station, which I believe is in your neighborhood, to be honest. You're College Terrace, right?
Yeah.
That's your fire station. In that fire station, 7 years ago, we had 8 dedicated personnel. We're now down to 3 dedicated personnel in that fire station. And that 3 dedicated personnel covers all the engines, or covers an ambulance, an engine, and a hazmat unit. So the amount of work that 8 people used to do has now been squashed down to 3 people. And now on top of that, the geographic area of what that fire station represents, meaning College Terrace first in district, and also the first in to go up into the foothills, because we no longer staff Station 8, they're going to be left unprotected, especially the foothills, because that is our closest engine to do that. So when brownouts occur, the 80 or so homes up in the foothills aren't going to have that primary Palo Alto Fire Department apparatus that's going to be responding to their calamity, let alone College Terrace as well. I know that we are kind of tight on time, but just mentioning that's basically from the suppression side. Now, can we switch gears and go a little bit into the prevention side?
Sure.
Okay.
Justin, how are we doing on time here? How much time do we have left?
So we're running 2 minutes over, but I emailed the next person that will be slightly late to the next meeting.
Okay, so just keep us on schedule. And then also, I think we should have budgeted more time for this. So
yeah,
I don't know if
we can definitely have a more in-depth conversation at some point in the future. I just am appreciative that we're having the opportunity to have this discussion, and I'm more than game to do another one in the future and answer any other questions that may come or arise from this first meeting here. So when we look at prevention, we have 1 fire marshal and 6 inspectors, 1 admin, and some plan checkers. Now, with the recent cuts that we had, we've lost 2 of those fire inspectors. So there's 2 sides of the Fire Prevention Bureau. There's the hazmat inspection side and the fire and life safety inspection side. So we lost, out of the 4 from fire life safety, we've lost 2. So we're down to, we're 50% decrease. Now, I know that there was some mention of Senate Bill 1205 in the council meetings. Are you familiar with what that is?
No.
Okay, so you know the ghost ship fire that happened a few years back in Oakland? From that, a law was passed called Senate Bill 1205, and then after that, Senate Bill 85. It's the ghost ship fire law. It means that certain types of occupancies, whether they be hospitals, schools, high-rises, apartment buildings, they have to be inspected on an annual basis because there's such a high potential for loss of life that you need to make sure that these types of facilities and locations have up-to-date and appropriate fire prevention systems in place and that they're functioning properly. So the problem with it is that losing 50% of your inspectors, we will not be able to effectively do all of our state mandated inspections, especially because we are now finding through the beginning process of doing an audit that we have additional state mandated inspections. 2 agencies north and south of us performed a 6-month to 1-year audit in which they captured all of the appropriate annual state mandated inspections, and they have roughly 12 to 1,400 in their respective districts. We are around 600 in ours, and I estimate that after we do an audit, we'll have about 600 more state mandated inspections. There is a silver lining to it though. When we do this audit, we have the ability to utilize our fee schedule, update and implement that fee schedule to these inspections. Already, the Fire Prevention Division, just on the fire life safety side, brought in $2.3 million in the last fiscal year. The cost to run that portion was about $1.6 million. So it was about $700,000 in the black. The hazmat side billed for 1.3 million and has captured 800,000, and it costs roughly 700,000. So they're $100,000 in the black just on that side alone. So when you look at cutting 2 additional positions, it is a $400,000 decrease. So it increases that margin to about $1.2 million. It's already $800,000 in the black in this division. Now you're making it 1.2 million, but you don't have the personnel to effectively do the job and follow the state law of Senate Bill 1205. So that's a big issue that we really need to work on. The challenge that's happening here is that about 7 years ago, our fire prevention division was taken out of the fire department and placed within development services. That's a very unique situation. I think that because of the COVID-19 calamity and the cuts that we had to do, it brought to light that there is possibilities of conflicts of interest, given the fact that we have a public safety division within a building division when it really housed within the fire department. For example, one of the challenges we found was that when we were doing the cuts across the board, the DSD director cut $400,000 from fire prevention, of which was already $1 million in the black roughly. So then they cut $400,000. That on an accrual like accountant's balance sheet, it shifted that cost over to the fire department's books. So we were originally going to probably lose about 6 people of a decrease, but when DSD cut 400,000, it shifted 2.0 FTEs over to the fire side, which means that we went from 6 people we had to fire to 8. The challenge with it is that for every dollar saved in DSD, it costs the fire department $1.75. And why $1.75? The sunk cost of training of a new probationary firefighter. So 2.0 FTEs is $400,000 that they shifted over. And then that is also an additional $300,000, $150,000 each to train those individuals. So you lose that sunk cost. So that's one of the things that we realized going through this, that it's opening the discussion that we need to bring back prevention under the fire department umbrella, because there is a little bit of a conflict. It's causing a little bit too much of a challenge. We need to perform an audit to update our state mandated inspections. It's just one of those things that fortunately COVID caused this to get shown, but fortunately we have an opportunity to, I believe, increase revenue by updating our audit list and utilizing our fees and implementing our fee schedule to it. I think that we're already a cost negative division, and it should be really housed within the fire department and not in development services.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I think we're running quite a bit late now, so it would be good to get to the next meeting. I think it would be helpful if we scheduled another meeting on this.
That would be fine. Those are my 2 main things. I have a few other things to talk about, but yeah, let's stay back on track for you guys. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your work, and thank you for your team service. Justin, if you could please work with Brent to schedule another time, maybe a bigger chunk of time, so we're not so crushed here.
Next time, I'll get one. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you both, and have a great Sunday, okay?
Have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.